it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today with my favorite books of 2018 part 2. Like I mentioned in the previous part, I have read a lot this year. And so I thought to myself, how am I able to narrow this down to 10? I'm not able to narrow it down to 10, and hey, top 18 books of 2018 sounds good enough, but it's pretty long for a video, so I decided to split this up into 2 to make it fun, and hey, you're getting more content from me after a very significantly dry month of content on my channel. So like I said, this video is part number 2, which means I'm counting down from my 9th favorite all the way to my absolute favorite book of the entire year. I'm really excited for this video because I get to gush about the books that I love. So without further ado, I'm gonna get started with this countdown. So coming in at spot number 9 is a trilogy. I am so happy I binge read this year. Usually every year there's like 1 or 2 series or trilogies that really stand out to me. I just cannot help but think about it when I'm not reading it, and this was that series for this year. The Reckoners trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. A lot of you guys know Brandon Sanderson or the Mistborn trilogy. I did finish the Mistborn trilogy this year. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It wasn't necessarily my thing. I actually recently purchased the new trilogy that happens in the Mistborn universe, so I'm really excited to get to those because that's more futuristic and probably more up my alley. However, the Reckoners trilogy has to do with vigilantes and villains and superpowered humans. Your girl is trash for that. He pulled this off very well, and I'm actually very surprised that there aren't any more books in this universe because, oh man, the Reckoners universe is so expensive, and I think he's probably writing more books in the universe, but he wrote Skyward instead. I am pretty excited for Skyward though. That's gonna be pretty cool. But I really want more books in this universe because I was just so engrossed, so engaged. I love the characters, even though there are a lot of people that say that the Mistborn characters are better and easier to get attached to and stuff. I disagree. Maybe it's because of this world and the stakes in this series. I just love reading anything that has to do with New Cargo. I need more. I really do. And I also need to give an honorary mention to Mitosis, which is the novella in between these 2 books. I really enjoyed reading that one as well. That is why this series by Brandon Sanderson makes the list of my favorite books of the year. I am so excited for another Reckoners book, if it's ever gonna happen. Coming in at spot number 8, we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I cannot believe I read this year. I was given this as a gift by my friend Hannah, who has a channel called Hannah Books and Other Things. I will link her channel in the description so you can check her out and you can subscribe to her because she's amazing. She gave me this book, and as soon as I received this book, I read it like straight away, and I could not stop. I really love those times where I receive books in the mail and I just cannot help but pick them up straight away. That happened with The Cruel Prince this year as well. I love that experience so much because you get so hyped up and the hype just builds up within you. You read it straight away to find that it is the perfect read. And of course you could guess that was the case with The Cruel Prince, and it was also the case with 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think I read this in like 1 or 2 sittings. It was just that addictive. This is a historical literary fiction, which isn't necessarily the thing that I read, or like it's not in my comfort zone. It's not like I'm closed off to it, but it's definitely not in my comfort zone. I did not expect to love this as much as I did, but oh boy, I did. This book is so engrossing and it is so heart-wrenching. Evelyn Hugo is technically a protagonist that can be unlikable, but you just love her at the same time and you want her to succeed. She's that type of protagonist that will do anything in her power to get what she wants. That is a protagonist I stand. I'm pretty sure that this book came out last year, but this year the hype has been real for it, and I'm so happy the hype has been real for it because if it wasn't, I probably wouldn't have picked this book up, and I'm so happy I did. Speaking of a never pleasant surprise, number 7, we have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I wasn't expecting to not love this book, but I wasn't expecting to love this book as much as I did. I want to reread it right now. I want to listen to Don't Stop Me Now by Queen right now. I think we played that in the car a billion times yesterday night because my brother has just watched Bohemian Rhapsody. I haven't yet as I'm filming this video, and my brother's obsessed with the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack, and so he's been playing Don't Stop Me Now in the car non-stop. Usually I get annoyed if my brother overplays something, but I am not annoyed at all because the first thing I think about when I hear that song is this book right here. This book is one of my favorite books of all time. It's very difficult to explain this book, but like it looks like a contemporary. And knowing John Green's style of writing, you might associate Hank Green with being being a contemporary writer. No, it might start off to feel like a contemporary, but this is a sci-fi. It is really awesome. If you are a contemporary lover, you would love this book. If you are a sci-fi lover, you'd love this book. If you love snarky humor, then you'd love this book. If you love Hank Green as a person, this right here is Hank Green in paper form. If you don't like Hank Green, I don't understand. How do you not like Hank Green? Hank Green is just... he's my king. He was always one of my favorite human beings of all time, but he's one of my favorite authors of all time now. Coming in at spot number 6 is a book that, although you guys might be surprised like it's in the 6th place, but it makes sense in my head. It was originally the 5th place, and then the book before it bumped it out of its place. I actually didn't expect that book to take its place, but hey, here we are. Coming in at number 6 is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Kingdom of Ash was definitely a very gut-wrenching conclusion, but it was a very satisfying conclusion, and I'm really happy the series has concluded at a time like this. I'm not as obsessed with the series as I was back when Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms was coming out. If anybody knew me like a few years ago when Empire of Storms came out, you knew I was crying buckets when I finished Empire of Storms. And it was also very funny because I had met so many friends through reading Empire of Storms. In fact, it was our first Biblio Squad book pick of the month. The Biblio Squad has been running for 2 years. That has been insane. I'm not saying that I didn't cry while reading this book. No, I definitely did cry. It's just I wasn't as sad as I was when I was reading Empire of Storms, because back then I really did care because I was so immersed in this world. But I somewhat personally feel like the series should have ended last year so I could feel the same feelings. I did reread the series in order to like get all the feels back, but at the same time, I'm 23 years old now. I've been following the series since I was like 19 or 20. It has been that long. And I'm not saying that I've outgrown the series, but it's just been a very long time coming. And so that is why it's not on my top 5. However, there were a lot of plot lines in here that got resolved. There were a lot of ships that sailed. There was 1 or 2 things that I was not okay with. You know, maybe 1 or 2 characters. They've really destroyed themselves in my mind. Other than that, I'm very satisfied with this conclusion. I am very happy. Kingdom of Ash ended the way that it did, but at the same time, I could use a novella or 2. That would be great. We're coming to spot number 5. A book that I was not expecting on my favorites list because I read the previous book a year and a half too late. A bunch of you guys know where I'm going with this. The second book in the trilogy was not doing it for me at all. I just felt very like book hungover. But at the same time, I thought to myself, no, I'm so far into this universe. Why am I going through series fatigue right now? I can't give up. And so I just decided to start reading the book that recently came out that everyone's talking about. And I fell into a trance because this book was amazing. Queen of Air and Darkness is in my top 5 for the year. And within the past month, I was not expecting this to make it at all on my top 18 of 2018. But here it is. This is the reason why Kingdom of Ash is not in the top 5. So Lord of Shadows, I read it a bit too late. I should have read it straight away, but then at the same time, I don't think I would have handled reading it straight away. Here's the thing. It was less heartbreaking than I actually expected it to be, but at the same time, it was still somewhat heartbreaking. And if I would have read it a year and a half ago, I would have totally understood the heartbreak of the fandom. Personally, I thought that it was gonna be sadder. Okay, let me tell you why I thought it was gonna be sadder. I thought that Christina was gonna die in Lord of Shadows. Christina wasn't the one that died. I mean, according to Cassandra Clare, she said that there were gonna be like 4 named deaths in Lord of Shadows. Like, I don't know why I thought that Christina was gonna be one of them. I seriously don't. I was just very scared because Christina is probably my favorite character in the series, but I was just paranoid and I wasn't ready to watch her die, but it turns out she didn't die. But, oh boy, there was death in Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness breaks your heart even more, but like in the best ways and the worst ways possible. I don't know how to sum this up, but if you've seen Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 4, you pretty much get the same vibes reading this book that season gave you, because those are the vibes that I got, and that is my favorite series of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I am so proud of Cassandra Clare for actually taking that risk and actually putting that element within her universe, and the way she did it was amazing. Props to you, Cassandra Clare. You are my queen. I'm so happy I did read this book at the time that I did, because as I've read a lot of books this year, I'm starting to slow down with my reading count, so I'm not pressuring myself to read as many books as I did throughout the year, but instead I've just been focusing on rereading books or reading books that are pretty chunky but just taking it slow with them. I told myself that I was gonna give myself like 2 weeks to read this, listen to it slowly because it's a 30-hour audiobook, and I ended up listening to it in a week because I couldn't stop listening to it. It was that good. I recommend. It was definitely a fun ride. Not really a fun ride. It was actually a very emotionally draining ride, but this finale was amazing. And speaking of a never emotionally draining ride, coming in at spot number 4 is the book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, a book that I finally read after years of putting it off. And I'm so happy. I'm very happy. I read this book. I'm very happy I also read Bridge of Clay this year. I got a book signed by Marcus Zuzak and he put a heart in there. It's honestly so beautiful. Meeting him was definitely one of my favorite author experiences of all time. But reading this book was just as amazing, except less wholesome because it was very heartbreaking. I think the reason why I loved this book so much was because of its surprise element for me. I was just expecting this book to be overhyped and people being like,
The Book Thief is my favorite book because it just has that sentimental value to it. I studied it back in high school. It was one of the first young adults I read.
And so I thought going into it that I would just get those vibes being like, this is somebody else's favorite book because it makes them feel nostalgic and that's pretty much it. No, this book is really good. And recently I've had friends read this book. They don't get the hype and that's totally understandable, but I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I was not expecting to put this on my favorites list. I'm seriously baffled. This book resonated with me and how much the concept really did work. I mean, sure, Marcus Zuzak created this concept, but boy, did he deliver that concept. I love this book, and at this point, I'm gushing, so I need to move on to my next book, and also because, like, I don't have that much memory left, so I need to actually keep moving on. Oh no! I dropped all my books. Coming in at spot number 3 is a book from a queen everybody loves. I love a series from this queen, but I was not expecting to love the sequel as much as I did, and I totally did. Vengeful by Victoria Schwab. If you guys don't know, this is the sequel to Vicious. And I did like Vicious. Vicious was definitely a very good book. I actually read Vicious twice. The first time I read it, I wasn't really that engaged or that engrossed. I was packing for Melbourne and I had a lot of things to worry about. I was listening to it on audiobook. I couldn't get engaged. Like, it was just okay to me at first, but then the second time I read it, I enjoyed it even more. And then I read this book. This book was just amazing. And this book, like I said in a previous wrap-up, it was kind of like A Gathering of Shadows is to A Dark Shade of Magic. It's pretty much a somewhat expansion of the world, but also a deeper character study into the main characters in the series. That's what this was. But not only that, it adds characters onto the story like A Gathering of Shadows does. That's why I love A Gathering of Shadows, and that is why I love Vengeful. Coming in at spot number 2 is definitely not a surprise to anyone. I mean, it will probably be a surprise that it's coming at number 2 and not number 1, considering last year's number 1 pick was the first book in the series. But my number 1 is completely different, and that completely surprised me. But my second favorite book that I read in 2018 was The Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. I am so happy we got the conclusion this year because we didn't know when we were gonna get the conclusion, and they announced they were getting the conclusion this year. This was definitely heartbreaking. I wanted my favorite characters to be happy. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but yeah, there were times of turmoil in here that I just could not handle. Laini Taylor delivered such an amazing sequel. I couldn't be happier with this conclusion, even though I do want some spin-offs. It would honestly be amazing if she did write some spin-offs, but at the same time, I'm very satisfied with the series as a whole. I'm so proud of Laini Taylor for writing this book. I'm so proud of my babies in here. It's also very funny because in the first book, there are a lot of characters that I don't want to root for, and then all of a sudden, that kind of changes in this book. That's also another big reason why this book was just like heartbreaking for me, because at first I was just like, I hate you so much. And then when you get to this book, you're like, wow, you are my precious cinnamon roll, and I will protect you till the end of day. It wasn't a surprise that this book would make it to my list. And coming in at spot number 1 is a book that some people will not be surprised to see, and then some people will be surprised to see. I haven't been talking about this book recently on my channel, so it might just come as like a shock factor to a lot of you guys, but this is my favorite book of the entire year. I loved this book. I laughed, I cried, I sobbed. It was that riveting, I couldn't breathe. Yeah, I'm quoting Kevin Keller here. I totally get when people say that this book is overhyped. It's so funny because I went into this book thinking that it was going to be overhyped and it wasn't gonna be that great as like people were saying it. I was shook, very shook. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I'm still wowed by it. I honestly know I don't necessarily really ship the main romance that is happening in here as of yet, but everything else that played into the story was just amazing. This story was very atmospheric, but also it got me feeling at times, and also at times it had me compelled and it had me feeling I could not put this book down. I was reading it during the superhero-a-thon and I was just not having it that week, and then all of a sudden I started this book and I could could not stop it. It was just that good. I could not stop thinking about it. At one point, dreamt about this book. It was just very cinematic. Those are my favorite types of books to read. I love reading books that had that type of cinematic quality to it. So that's what I felt when I read this book. I think I loved this book so much more because I loved its cinematic quality, as well as the fact that I did love some of the characters, and I loved this world. Oh my goodness. A lot of people keep on comparing this to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I haven't mentioned this on my channel. A lot of you guys actually comment a lot of references to Avatar: The Last Airbender in my comment section every once in a while. I need to address it now so that people know I don't watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's just never been a show I've been gravitated towards, but after reading this book, I want to watch the show very badly. I really do. I somewhat understand the hype, but I need to get into the show. I need to buckle down. I need to watch it. Maybe it's because I'm just intimidated by how many series there are, but before I read this book, I wasn't really compelled to do so. Now that I've read this book, I am definitely compelled to do so because this is one of my favorite books of all time. I know a lot of you guys say that the comparison is not real, but still, your girl wants to try it out. I think that's why I went into it with very low expectations as well. I hadn't watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, so I wasn't that hyped for this book at all. But hey, now I'm hyped to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender because one of my favorite books of all time has been compared to it. And even though there are some flaws in here that are definitely noticeable, this is my favorite book of the entire year, and I am not sorry about that. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. I hope you enjoyed going through my favorites list with me as I enjoyed gushing about them. If you want to purchase any of my favorite books of the entire year, I have Book Depository purchase links down in the description so you can check them out, you can purchase them, and you can help me out by doing so. And I also have social medias. I'm at G-Swizzel Books on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also a Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.